Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, good morning, wherever you're watching this and whenever you're watching this. This is Changemaker Teens Global presenting with Sammy. A little discussion on if you want to take your children out of school, or it's, they've had enough, and your homeschooling may be something for your family, but they have an individual education plan potentially at school, or there's some tricky challenges with some learning at school, and you want to know, well, how do I homeschool, let alone when I've got more than one child, or there's some, we just say, tricky things. And we use those. Sammy will give other words for our neurodiverse children. I say I'm allowed to use those words, so please don't judge me, because one of my boys is definitely high functioning ASD, or in his days he was diagnosed as high functioning atypical Asperger's with anxiety. And we took him out at age 11, and I often wondered throughout his growth and a homeschooling journey whether he would have even got a diagnosis. He was just thriving and flourishing and finding out who he is and the connection between us. So that's something you can unpack as well, and Sammy can speak to. I'm sure she's amazing. I've heard lots about her in Victoria. Our beautiful Cara recommended Sammy and found her, and has a lot to offer new parents as well. So, and new parents at homeschooling, and also can offer the children as well. So we've blessed. I don't think we've ever had that before, that the family actually is there listening. So you've already started homeschooling, because this is life. This is life where our children are around us and learn. So I'll be quiet now, hand over to Sammy, and I may come in from time to time and ask questions, because I do know some other questions that other people have suggested to be asked as well.
Brilliant. I love questions. I'm much better at answering questions than I am about just thinking up things to say. So that's great.
All right. So in your experience, I'm sure some things will be answered. So I'll mute now. Thanks, Sammy, sweetie.
Thanks, Heidi. So hello, everyone. I'm Sammy Ann. I have a business called 𝙤𝙤𝙢𝙝𝙤𝙡. It's something that came from my background is in teaching. So I have an early childhood education degree. So I was in kindergartens, in long daycare centres, and in primary schools for quite a few years, and then left that system for many reasons, which I won't go into because it will take forever, but I left that system because there were some things happening that I didn't agree with. And so fell into a job at a child psychology clinic, actually, and just adminning for a couple of days, filling in, and then ended up being there for 6 or 7 years, ran the practice, ran programs for children who had diagnoses of autism, ADHD, and we were running social skills groups and school readiness programs and things like that, and really just supporting families as they're going through the whole journey, from finding out that they need to see a psychologist in the first place to going through the assessment process, getting a diagnosis, and then the things that would happen after that, all of the different funding options, all of that kind of stuff. And I guess the biggest thing that I saw was the gaps for families where they're being told that, essentially they're being told there's something wrong with their child and that they need to go and fix it, which is something that I disagree with anyway, which I'll probably go into a little bit today as well. But there was a real gap between people who were, they were just sort of sent off. They would go to their GP, and the GP would send them to the pediatrician. They would wait 3 to 6 months to see their pediatrician, who'd then say, well, now you have to go and see all these people. Then you wait 3 to 6 months to see your psychologist, an OT potentially, a speech potentially, get all of these different assessments happening. And meanwhile, you're at home going, like, I'm still struggling with these behaviors. I still don't know how to support my child. And that part doesn't come until the label's given, and then you start to go through the process of finding the right therapists. And so I really saw a gap for families who needed support in the meantime. So that's sort of how I got started. And then in the last, 12 to 18 months, with the climate that we've had, particularly in Australia and down here in Victoria, especially with lockdowns and remote learning, and there has been a massive increase in people moving into homeschooling. Now, for neurodiverse families anyway, homeschooling is a valid and regular choice, because schools are not designed for different brains. They're designed for one way of being and thinking. So it's often neurodiverse children who struggle quite a lot at school, and so that's when a lot of families will make that choice to pull them out. But I think more and more we're seeing all sorts of different families see how the schooling system is actually not really ideal for their child. And so I have done a lot of learning over the last, probably 12 to 18 months. I've been doing this now in terms of working and helping people transition to homeschooling. So that can be anything from helping them with the application part to helping them with ongoing ideas for what you might like to do at home, to really sort of structuring your day around what your child needs. So I think, you know, in getting to the topic of today, going from, you know, a school system where you might have IEPs, and then as a parent kind of going, how do I implement a lot of those things at home that, you know, they're given to teachers who are professionals, they're given to, you know, the psychologists and speeches who usually have some input into what goes into those plans and all that kind of thing. I think my first point would be to look at the IEP and what's on it and work out whether they're actually goals that you want for your child. Because often the goals that are put into individual education plans are so that a child can get through education. Once they come home with you, you don't need them anymore. So, you know, eye contact is it's a cultural thing. It's something that in Australia we think is important, and there are lots of cultures around the world who actually think it's rude to look people in the eye. So eye contact is not a necessity. It's not something that we need to teach children to be able to do. We're much better to work out what sorts of environments they need in order to be able to listen best. So if that means looking at something else, if that means fiddling something with their hands, if that means having like a wobble cushion or some other kind of way of sitting or being or moving their body, and that's what's going to help them concentrate and listen best, then that's what we can provide them at home, and then you'll find that they go leaps and bounds. Things like, you know, reducing stimming behaviours. So if there's particular things where they might be picking at their jumper, or they might be, you know, needing to rock back and forth and things like that. Like if we actually look at that, is that a behaviour that is harming anybody else? Is it a behaviour that is distracting people, or is it just something that the child is actually naturally doing to self-regulate? And if that's the case, can we just adjust our expectations? So I think some of the biggest shifts that happen going from a school environment to home is actually in parents ourselves working out, what does my child actually need? And what have I been conditioned to think they need that's actually the opposite of what they need? So I'd love to know, Narelle in particular, how that sits for you and how that sounds, and if there's any particular things that maybe you've had come up that you might want me to answer on anything about.
Yeah, I'm very new to it, so it's a bit hard to to say what we're going to struggle with. But I think what I mostly found when we had to homeschool, when we were in lockdown, he struggled very much with staying on task. He's very much a perfectionist, so he would constantly sit there and go, but you're not my teacher, you won't be able to teach me, and having everything just all in emails given to him, he was so overwhelmed with it because it wasn't like set tasks for him, that he really, really did struggle, and it came to the point where he'd have meltdowns and be in tears and not wanting to do any of his work. So in the end, I ended up just doing homeschool sort of life skill stuff, where he learned how to cook. He learned how to do, you know, house chores and doing the hands-on sort of stuff. And I just didn't worry so much about the academic sort of side of stuff, because that's what kept him happy. So my issue, I guess, going forward is I worry, how do we incorporate, you know, what is on the curriculum to being at home? You know, if he's refusing to do certain subjects, how do I get him to do that?
If I could speak first.
Yeah,
Can you
go,
remember
Heidi.
what you were going to say, Sammy?
Yep, I'll keep it in here.
Yeah, thank you, Narelle, for sharing that and making that distinction between, you know, the lockdown homeschooling or school at home versus some of the things that a normal homeschooler would address, some of those hands-on activities, lifestyle, and that even depends on the child as well. So I was just speaking with another mum who has neurodiverse children as well, and her eldest is coming along to our Genius homeschool camp that we've got coming up, where they find their passions and purpose, etc. But what I asked her before I left there, I said, we're about to do this call. What tip do you have? Because she's been homeschooling for 10 years. And so she did have her two oldest in school there for a while. I said, what's your tip? What's your top tip for these new people, new families? And she said, IEP, rip it up, get to know your child. DSchool. So Sammy, maybe you can talk about the DSchooling as well. So DSchool, connect with your child, find out who they are. You definitely will not spoil them and, hurt them, ruin their chances of success or happiness or anything if you just deschool or just let them find who they are, but more so you two connect and you find out who your son is. I'd be curious to know why now, why now has he said, I've had enough, Mum. I want to come home. After you did say you did change your tack, but after he did say, you're not my teacher, you can't teach me. So you listen to that. Kudos to you. Well done that you thought, okay, well, I am a role model. I am a mentor. I can facilitate his learning, the love of learning. School is optional. Learning is natural. Okay, school is absolutely optional. Learning is the natural thing. So for you to realize and step back, go and say, well, what else can he learn? What else can I model? What else can he participate in that will give him and his life value still and allow us to connect? And then once you find out who he is and he find out what he likes, to go from there. And then I'm sure Sammy's got some tips there. So thanks, Marnie, for those tips for new families.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think that, when you talk about deschooling, it kind of touches on what I mentioned before, that I think the biggest process of deschooling is actually deschooling ourselves, because we are so conditioned into this belief that children should be at this level by this time in each of these subjects, and they need to have a wide range of subjects that they study because it's really important to be, I don't know, multi-talented or whatever we think that the case is. And actually, if you just step back and did nothing, if you literally did nothing, children can't help but learn. Eventually, they'll get bored enough that they're going to go and look for stuff to do, and they want to know more stuff. And so, the idea that we have that, that curriculum has just, it is adults deciding these are all the topics that children must know. We have all of this knowledge, and here's the knowledge we need to fill their brains with. Actually, children already have brains, and they already have thought, and they already have ideas and values and things that they're interested in. And if we can tap into that, then that's how we're really going to authentically engage them in learning. We're going to be able to extend them. We'll be able to provide opportunities for them to go as far as they want in that subject, because there's no bell telling them, okay, that subject's done now, and you have to move on to something else. It's like, no, if he's really interested in a topic, and here's the thing I think for our neurodiverse kids in particular, and I've heard especially true if you have ADHD, that you can really hyper focus on one thing, and if you're in it, you're in it. You might have to be coming in with snacks and drink and say, hey, by the way, maybe have something to eat, maybe have you gone to the toilet today, those sorts of things, because he'll just be so in whatever it is that he's interested in. But the hard thing is finding that, because when you've been in the school system, generally they're fed things. They're saying, at this time you do this, at this time you do this topic is what we're learning about. You're going to get graded on whether you're any good at remembering the facts from this topic. All of those sorts of things sets our kids up to distance themselves, to disconnect from that part of themselves that tells them what they actually want to do and what they actually want to learn. So the deschooling process itself is really about stripping back all of those things that have happened, and stripping back that I'm going to tell you what you're learning, and there's going to be some sort of thing. The difficult part, I think, about doing that with our neurodiverse kids is that they also will often like some kind of structure. So balancing it for autism and ADHD in particular, generally you're going to need some structure with options in it, built into it. So there's going to be perhaps an order of some things that happen throughout the day, but there needs to be choices within that so that they don't feel stifled and like they have no control. If you're dealing with somebody who's just autistic, then potentially they might like a little bit more of a solid structure. So this is the part I think that Heidi was talking about really just getting to know your child and where they're at and what they need. Because a lot of the time we kind of hand them over when they're 5 to prep and say, can you you take over this now, to our teachers, and we forget that actually all the time that we spend with them, they're learning from us, and that we're teaching them things, and that doesn't stop just because they go to school. And we can really just tap back into that natural things. And exactly what you described, Narelle, about we just did some cooking together, and we, you at his age, you're probably looking at doing some, some budgeting for maybe toys or things that he wants to buy. And, maybe he's doing some chores around the house or something to earn some money, and you can teach him how to actually manage that in a way that means he gets to where he wants to go, he reaches his goals. All of those sorts of things that's learning. And I can show you where that fits in the curriculum, because the curriculum itself, actually, especially in Australia, is more open than what we think, because the teachers will pick a topic that fits the curriculum. As parents, we can also pick topics that fit the curriculum, that are things like learning to budget, gardening, cooking, things that they love to do. We can actually work that into the curriculum as well. But I think the first part is actually forgetting about all that stuff for a while, forgetting about where they should be at, especially when, if you're pulling them out because they have mental health issues, where they've got anxiety, or where they've got things that are actually preventing them from being in a calm state. We've got to get back to mental and emotional wellness first, because there's no learning that's going on if they are constantly on edge, if they're constantly questioning themselves or questioning what's going on, or worried if they're safe, because essentially that's what their body is telling them, is that they're not safe. And that can happen at schools when the school system is not set up and the environment is not set up to support them to feel safe. So that's the first most important thing, is getting back to that calm state. And if that means that, for the first week they're, playing some video games, and then they're going out and riding their bike, and then, you're doing some cooking together, and that's about it. Awesome. I think generally the rule is about a month to every year that they've been schooled. You might need to de-school. So feeling like you're not doing anything for a long time is pretty normal. And, I know that you mentioned that you sort of signed up to a curriculum, so you can work that stuff in as well. And if he is into that straight away, then you might say, okay, between, 9:30 and 11 o'clock in the morning, you do these things. And so he's got the structure there. He can choose within that which topics he wants to do. And then the rest of the day is for the deschooling process. I think it depends on different families, and you're going to work out what works for you best. I've known families who've just gone full into whatever the kids want to do, and there's families that go, I feel anxious unless I can see there's some sort of box being ticked, and so we're going to just put in, okay, like 1 hour of a day, the structure is this, but within that you have choice. So that might be doing, and a particular app that he really likes, or there's a particular part of the curriculum that he really wants to learn about. There might be a history topic or something they provide you some resources for, and you can do that for an hour each day. But it doesn't need to look like this, 9 to 3:30, structured mealtime breaks, like all of that stuff is really what we're moving away from, and why we're often choosing not to send them to school, because that's the stuff that's actually can be quite damaging to, to them finding out what they want to do and who they are really. And that's the end goal, like turning 18 and then knowing what you want to do at uni is not the end goal. Like, it's got to be, who am I as a person? What do I love to do? What brings me joy? How can I fill my life with more joy, while also, being a responsible member of my community, while also, being able to support myself. That's really, as parents, I think what we want for our kids. And so finding ways that we can get there without the stress and trauma. Like we can, I think we've sort of been conditioned to think that, well, how will they build resilience if they don't have challenges at school and things like that? My philosophy is that we can learn without trauma. We can learn those lessons in a much more supported way. And at 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, they don't need to be learning to take exams and do homework, because they're going to need to know it when they're 15, 16, 17, 18. We've got time, right? Like, we can do fun stuff now, and then we've got time to build that stuff in, because when they know what they're interested in, they will do those hard things because they want to learn those things. And they want to, if they decide they want to be a doctor, they're going to go and work out how to do exams and learn a whole bunch of things about the anatomy and do all of those things, because they're not going to feel forced to. They're not going to feel like they have to. They're going to say, no, that's what I want to do. I know that's what I want to do. That's things I need to do. All right, cool. And then you can work out how to support them from there.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you, Sammy. Wow, that was a lot there. Thank goodness.
Yeah, I talk fast.
Yeah, thank goodness we've recorded it so we can go back.
I should have warned you.
I just love, and I want to honor you, Darren, too, that you've turned up as dad. We've got, a representative of the both parents here, so that's fantastic. I want to know, did anything press buttons when Sammy was talking? Like, what I mean by press buttons, that someone went, oh, no curriculum, we bought curriculum, what about this? Or how do I find the balance between, doing the curriculum? As I love that you reminded us, Sammy, that, teachers choose topics to put in there, yet less authentic. They're not listening to each child, and they also might choose things that they are forced to, recommended to within the school. So it's probably less of the teacher choosing and more of the school philosophy choosing the curriculum. Whereas you now get a chance to change the communication between, you know, mum and dad and other 4 children to say, well, okay, what do we want to learn about? What inspires us? So when my boys came home, and as I said, my oldest, he was 11 at the time, I sat them down on these big crash mats, because, you know, every family with boys, and especially one neurodiverse one that just wants to, you know, crash on these from time to time. I sat them down there and I said, so, and some of you have heard this, some of you that might be listening to this one have heard this before, that I said, if you knew why you were on the planet, big question, but you know, they're kids and they know. If you knew why you were on the planet, why are you here? What's the reason you are here? And they answered like that at 11 and 8. And one said, my ASD boy said, I want to take the rubbish cars off the road and invent something else. I think, great. That's what he said. The other one, the 8-year-old, said, is that I want to invent something small that has a big impact on people. I was worried because he was into explosives at the time. So I was a bit concerned. But he looked at more medical procedures to help people and went down that track. And I said, okay, let's do that with our eyes, ears, and heart open. So we took that topic, and we ended up with Maddie, the eldest, we ended up with looking at the Industrial Revolution, because we needed to know, well, if he's going to invent cars, how does mechanics work? What's the history of it? So we did a bit of that, and we read some books about that. We read about, you know, Ford, and he had all the car magazines, and then he wanted to put on a car show. So he was looking at the real estate that he would need and looked at noise requirements and then marketing a car show. Then we connected him with somebody out of the magazine that was putting on a car show. I connected with him, and then my husband took him and met him, and he got this huge t-shirt and this massive cap from him, you know. Then we looked at a business. Then we rang a university at 14 years old. Oh no, you might have been 13 still then, in Melbourne, to find out what's involved to do a business course, you know, to do this. He had a Shopify t-shirt, all based around this and taking it around. But at the same time, whatever their interests were and however they developed, one side we had a little bit of business skills, and on the other side we had music. And so when he was 14, he just taught himself all these different musical instruments. And I went, okay, that's fine. But so he'd lost all distance from anything that even resembled any sort of curriculum. He was just, apart from music, that was a big part. And I said, that's fine, but it's got to mean something. You know, to have these gifts, you're given these gifts to get them out of you and share them, you know, like your dad's got gifts, your mum's got gifts. You've actually used them in life before, and, you know, at whatever age have had some, you know, job, you know, using those gifts, or, you know, business using those gifts. So it fed you and it nurtured other people. So then he looked at Certificate 3 in music, TAFE course, went to Music Industry College, and now he's just left. At Music Industry College, he was doing grade 11 and 12. He's actually not interested in doing term 4 at the Music Industry College. He trialled out for a creative university, having his Certificate 3 that he did at 15. He was risk assessed at 15. This is my ASD boy. Amazing support. All I needed to do was stay in touch with the tutor and talk with him each week and see how he's doing. He actually did screen and media first, which he didn't care about that much, but he learnt the TAFE system and walked past the music block every day. And so he just got to learn how it all worked. And left grade 12, and he's now did his audition on bass and was offered straight away to get into this creative university. So within 2 hours of the audition, he could have chosen to start next year and finish grade 12. But he chose not to, and to start straight away. So there is hope. This is the guy that when he would not sleep. When he was at school, he would not sleep. I had to sleep on the floor beside him. He came out of school, massive rash all on his arms, back of his legs. Part of his deschooling process was it to come out of his skin. He couldn't walk there for a while because his skin was so bad. And I just said, it's okay. If you're just getting comfortable in your own skin. You're finding your own skin. We just use that metaphor, and it's okay. And the homeschool co-ops, the groups, no one judged him. No one bullied him. Look at your skin, mate. Why can't you wear this clothes? What? No, everybody was just nurturing and held the space for him. And I learned so much from the other mummies and families. And it was just delightful. So terrific environment, you know, welcome to the homeschooling environment for sure in the community. They'll find their spot.
Can I jump in? Can I add to that, Heidi?
Sure.
Because I want to say that, you know, as you were talking, I think a lot of concerns that people have as well is that, oh, my child will only focus on one thing, like they'll only be interested in one thing, they'll just want to do this one thing, and what about all the other topics? Because we really expect that children will do all of these different topics, you know, by the time they get to 18. But then, of course, we want them to specialize and, you know, go down one particular path that they want to go down and just magically know that at 18. But it's interesting, even as you're talking, that when he was specializing in music, well, music is not just music. Music is maths, music is English, music is communication, music is creative expression. Like there's more than one curriculum area in whatever it is that they're going to do. And we'll be able to build in a lot of the other curriculum areas if they're not sort of inherently already there with other options. Thanks, Narelle. Thank you. I know you guys have to rush off to your daughter's thing, I think, so all good. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, so I wanted to sort of add that on to say that, you know, if there are already really strong interests from your kids, we really want to embrace that, because what you'll find is, and I think, Heidi, you mentioned that he went in one direction first, where he was like, okay, cool, well, this is kind of calling me, so I'm going to figure out what this is, and then it's led to the next thing, and that's what we do as adults. I mean, I certainly do, and especially the more I've gone into self-development, is that one thing will niggle at me and go, okay, I'm going to learn a bit more about that, and that will trigger me to go, oh, what about this thing? And that's how you pursue learning. And as kids, inherently, that they're just innately ready to do that. And we kind of push that out of them by putting them through this schooling system that says this is what you must know and this is what you must learn. But yeah, I think just have no fear to follow their interests and use their interests to facilitate different topics. So if you think there's a topic you're not covering, like perhaps they just really push back on maths because school taught them that they were bad at maths because they couldn't learn the way that the teacher taught them. They couldn't understand what was going on. They didn't get good grades on you know, times when they were marked with homework or with tests or anything like that. They were in the class that were taught the lower end of things, because the kids know this. When they put them into different groups to target higher levels and lower levels, they know what level they're in. They know whether they're in the smart class or the dumb class. Like, they give them those labels, even when the teachers don't use those labels, they give them to themselves. And so if you have a child who's really resistant to maths, then, you know, but they really love music, let them learn music. You don't have to teach them any maths specifically. They can just learn music, and they are going to be getting maths concepts innately through that. And then you can start to introduce and say, well, hey, I've noticed that you're really good at, like, you know, keeping in time. Did you know that's actually really good maths? And you can count how many bars are in, you know, or you know, music notes, or like you can start to talk to them about how actually they're really great at maths. And then you can start to maybe just play some board games with them, play some things that they're really interested in, you know, ask them questions about, you know, what would happen if you add this bar to this bar, you know, all of those sorts of things. And then all of a sudden they can start to get their confidence back, and you can point out how they're not bad at maths. They just didn't learn the way the teacher was teaching them, and that had nothing to do with them. That was the teacher, you know, all of those sorts of things. And that takes time, and that takes freedom for the kids to just explore that and to not feel pushed, because the last thing you want to do is pull them out of school and then try to push maths on them because you feel like that's where they're behind on. That they need time to heal from feeling like they're bad at maths, you know, and you can apply that to any subject.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sammy. Thank you. Tennille, would you like to ask any questions, either of your own or, you know?
I think what Sammy, was it? Sorry, what she just said was good to know, because I've been today trying to look into how I can write up a plan for both of my children, but mostly for Eamon, and I feel like I just got so bogged down with it. I'm like, wow, this is so overwhelming. I just don't know where to begin. And it's really hard because I feel like the deschooling thing sorry, I just had to get rid of a phone call then. The deschooling might be something that we have to consider, being especially with Eamon. I feel like he's kind of really been lost along the track from year one. So it's like he's in year 7 now, and he's just, I don't know. I can't specifically say that there's something that he just thrives on.
Mm.
It's just like he's completely checked out of the whole school thing.
And that age group too, that process is he's really developed identity throughout those years.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
His self-identity is, I am no good at school. I don't like school. Schoolwork
Yep.
is not for me. And so it's gonna take a lot of creativity to be able to, and also I think restraint as a parent to go, what are you interested in doing? Let's explore that. You love video games. Okay. Go and play your favorite video game for an hour. Let me play with you. Tell me what it is that you really love about this video game. And that might give you some insight into what is it that he's really loving about this particular thing. And that can be for anything, BMX riding or like whatever he's into. And then you can start to tease a bit of those out and bring that into other things. So if it's if it's the timing thing, if it's like beating the clock, it's like, okay, can we introduce some games or some things that he has to do, like he has to write a sentence by the time the timer runs out, or like, is there ways that we can build that into other things? And also, can we just learn more about it? Like, well, how do video games get made? Like, can we investigate how do they come up with things? Like, if you were going to make a video game, what would it be about? Like, what would the characters look like? What would their names be? What would their backstories be? And then go down that path and really, deeply explore what he's interested in and validate what he's actually interested in. Because often at school, kids, what they innately love to do is invalidated as not important or somehow less important. Like, if you're not good at English and maths, then somehow like you're less than, even though you might be really brilliant at music or drawing or do it, physical activity or whatever it is. But we're sort of, even though all of those subjects are technically in the curriculum and covered, there's still this push that English and maths are like the important things that you have to be able to do. So but I think there's a difference between what you're actually going to do and what you would put in a plan. So what state are you in, Tina?
I'm in New South Wales.
Okay. So New South Wales, I'm pretty well versed in Victoria and New South Wales. So New South Wales require you actually to address each of the stage statements for where he's at in terms of the application. So generally what I would suggest is go and look at what year level you're applying for. So if that's next year, what year level he would be going into next year. Copy all the stage statements for each subject, paste it into a document, and then you're going to put in just your daily family activities that you're going to do. And then if there's any extra things, like if you have a curriculum that you're wanting to do, or if you have some resources that you've looked up or different apps and things like that, you're going to then just put them in under the stage statements. So for English, you're going to put things like, if he likes to read, or if you read together as a family, you'll be like, reading books about this, or like doing research on this topic that he's really interested in. You could put, if you like to cook as a family, you could put cooking in there, because you have to read a recipe, you have to, write a grocery list, you have to, all of those sorts of things. So, and it depends, I think, for families as well, it depends how much can you understand of what they're actually asking in those stage statements. Like, if that in itself feels really overwhelming, it might be helpful for you to go, okay, this is, just pick a curriculum and go, okay, this is the curriculum you're going to follow, and then just tell them you're going to do that, and then get the application in, and then don't do it. And just go and do what you want to do. Because if you get selected for a review, they're not judging you based on how well you've followed that plan. They're judging you based on how much have you supported your child to learn, and what sort of progress are they making. So, based on where they're at to where they are now, are they really happy and healthy and thriving? Are they, coming up with activity ideas to do themselves, because now you've got them to a point where they're able to do that. They're not like, I think it's very different from the school system in that, schools are looking to grade the kids the homeschooling reviewers are not.
Yeah.
Not about that, you know.
Yeah. That's
yeah,
right.
and the process of the application itself is really to show the, you know, the assessors in New South Wales, you'll have an interview process. It's really to show them that you've considered how you're going to support your child to learn in the different areas. And that can be a multitude of different ways. That can be through play, through games, through engaging in whatever they're interested in, and you can show them how you're going to do that. That could be through getting different apps in. It might be a tutor for a particular subject that you know that you're just, the child might have some interested in, but you have no idea, so it's easy to get someone else in, or if you have the means to do it, to get someone else in to teach them. All of those sorts of things you can talk about, because all they want to know is that you've considered it, that you're not just going, we're leaving school and that's it, you know, like you've actually considered how you're going to approach education in your home, and, you know, and provide for your child based on what they need. That's the thing that they're looking for. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it does make sense. And I, that sounds good. I just worry too, because I've got the two of them. Mia's going into year 10 next year. She's in year 9 now. So I just wonder if, because I'm kind of starting out on this, am I going to go too basic, if that makes sense? And I wasn't great at school either. I was in that rotten system where you kind of fall through the cracks too. So I know, look, I have got a 21-year-old, and he you know, he left school in year 9 because the school, he jumped from multiple schools, and they ended up saying with the principal in a meeting, you know, like, you need to consider whether you want him here on earth at this moment, and if he has the option to learn or earn. So he threw himself into his full-time job. Oh, well, at the time it was part-time, but he went full-time, and he's thrived. He's 21. He left school in year 9. He's quite capable. I can't say how he would go in the education system if he had to go, but I mean, he's got well, he's running a business, Nelly,
for the life experience.
So he's probably got a lot of experience in business, and he is going through courses with that. But it's just, I know that in my head, but it's the whole, that programming that we, you know, am like, oh, is this will I be too basic for them, you know, and not providing them enough of what they need.
I think the key thing to learn as parents there is that we're not teachers, and we don't have to be. Like, there's no, you know, there's no, I have to really understand, like, as a teacher, generally, you have to really understand the topic from a lot of different angles in order to be able to present that learning to a child. And then if they don't understand the way you're presenting it, to be able to present it in a different way so that you can actually, you know, pass that knowledge on. As parents, all we need to do is facilitate it. Go, you really want to learn about space? Okay, cool. Let's get some resource books from the library about space. I'll see what sort of programs are around in the community. Like, can we go somewhere and you know, to the observatorium and like look at stars and have someone who knows what they're talking about talk through what you're looking at? Like, it's just sourcing the material. So whether that's sourcing teachers, sourcing things in the community, sourcing resources, like whatever it is, that's your job, is just to listen to what they want to learn about and then find the things that they can learn it from.
And so I'm kind of getting that. So, for example, like you just said, that space thing, the topic of space might involve reading books, which would cover your English. Then you've got, you could work out the, you know, I don't know.
Even, do you know what? Even like searching for resources on the internet or in a library is really key life skill. Like working out, if you what to Google, like what phrases in Google is going to give you the results that you need, because Google is great, but Google is still a system that responds to what you put into it. And then working out from that list that Google gives you, which is actually the list that's, you know, which is actually the resource that is, you know, reliable. Like, has it got references on there? Has it got like a date at the bottom where they've, you know, what date they actually produced that, you know, how old is the information? Like, being able, especially sort of going into that like mid to late high school age, being able to work that stuff out and apply some critical thinking skills to what you're actually reading. Huge for life. But if you want to go into further study, anything like that sort of skill is actually really important. And then, you know, like, how many kids these days know how to go into a library and find what they need?
Yeah.
That's a skill that we need, like that's important to learn about, and how to find things, and what sorts of books will actually give us the, you know, reading from a blurb on the internet and working out, do I want to buy that book? Is that going to give me what I need to learn, or what I'm interested in learning about? Or is it on a slightly different topic and actually I'm not interested in it? All those sorts of things really comes into it as well. And I think we often forget about those, because in terms of curriculum, they're generally sort of overarching ideals about, you know, critical thinking skills and, you know, and community mindedness and all these sorts of things. And schools will often sort of proliferate that they're teaching all of those things, and they're teaching it generally in a kind of artificial way. Yeah. Whereas when you've got the kids at home and they're genuinely doing these things, and they're genuinely learning things, skills for life, then it's much more authentic, and they're actually just going to use those skills all throughout. So yeah, even just that process in itself is really, really valuable.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, definitely the research, because now we're like, used to be told at school that you'll need to learn this just in case it's on the test, or just in case you need it later on. Now the learning is just in time, you know, as soon as they want to know it, they can research it.
Yeah,
absolutely. So our grade, when I took the grade, you know, the 8-year-old out, his teacher said, doesn't matter what you teach them, as long as you teach them research skills, and that's it. So yeah, before they came out, or just as they came out, I rang the library and booked a lesson with one of the librarians to show them around the library, and they had their little trolleys and, you know, worked out the catalogue system, and then showed them how it works on their little phones, or I think they had iPads then, and how to actually log into the library and even download an audio book or book something ready for when they go in next time. Maybe different now with lockdowns, that you can drive past and pick up a book, or download Kindles or something like that. So to get to know even how to use a library is wonderful as well, because we want libraries to be around for many, many years to come.
Yes.
So I just picked up a couple of things there too, Sammy and Tennille, and those who are listening, because where there's one, there's many. So there'd be definitely, this information would be beneficial to a lot of people listening, and we'd love your feedback and questions, because we can invite Sammy back and have more a series of these as well. And Cara unfortunately couldn't make it today. She's our New South Wales representative, and there's many people we know between us in the homeschool community that could maybe answer your specific questions. So if we don't know, we will definitely find the people that do know and can support you. And at the same time, your community gets bigger and bigger as well, which we want to help you with, because we went through that as well, and people helped us. So we'll just pay that forward. So I think we said that people know that the representatives in each of your states aren't judging you, but they want to see that you are supporting your children. So the language you can use with yourself as you support and connect to yourself and be the change and model you want your child to connect to who they are. You want the connection between family members. So you can model that by connecting to you. Now, as mums and dads, we lose that connection over the years. We get the blanket of life comes on top of us. So we now, through this deschooling process, they're gifts. You know, when something presses a button, that's a gift. You've got a great example that even leaving at grade 9 to Neil, you know, didn't even have homeschooling involved, but that's the massive trust. He went straight out into the workforce, you know, so you've got, you know, they can land on their feet as well, and you're always there to catch them anyway. You know, if something happens, they're always your children. So rather than even thinking, oh my goodness, they're judging me, you know, they're to think, oh, they're just curious. They're just curious. So knowing that you're talking the language to your children, to yourself within the family, that the authorities are curious whether we are supporting our child to learn, and the love of learning, that they will thrive later, then let's us get curious. Let's, you know, it comes from the top down, they say. So judgment, or if we're talking that they're judging us, we may end up judging you and go, oh my goodness, they're judging me, so quick, judge the child. And it's not, you know, it's not hitting them or anything, but we could be adding to their mental health, and just because it's our stuff in the way. And if that does happen, ladies and gentlemen, it's all good. Just breathe and start again. And you can, you know, just even speak to it if you are, you know, one to use your words more, to just to say, oh, this is all new to me too, hun. You know, we're doing this together, and you know, it's all good. So breathing, having a curious tone. So I'll just give you a few practical things for this self-management and support. Also, I've heard it with a couple of clients too, where parents say, oh, you don't have to tell me this, that you're doing this. You don't have to don't tell me that you're doing this now, because sometimes they want reassurance to say, Mom, I've done my worksheet, or I've had lunch or whatever. You don't have to tell me that. It's all good. You know, just go to the toilet when you want to. You don't have to put your hand up anymore. You know, Josh did that for quite a while, even at the dinner table, was putting his hand up and go. Instead of saying you don't need to do that, let them know what they can do, you know, or ask them, how does it make you feel that you've done that? That's so cool, isn't it? And then connect them to that feeling as well. So that feeling probably has something to do with them feeling more confident, or more self-assured, or more connected, that they know what they need. So yeah, definitely, I loved hearing validate their interest. Not to worry, but to wonder, you know, that whole wonder, curiosity. So and you're human, we are human, when worry or concern comes in, just go, thanks for sharing. And this is where we're heading now. This is what's important to me and my family now. So just that language, it's a change, absolutely. And there's lots of maybe negative stuff out there. Close off from that. I've mentioned that to a number of families that I've had. Just whatever's happening, or say, how does that make me feel when I see that out in the world? This is, you know, whatever's happening that you're seeing, whatever's bothering you and bothering your family or whatever, say, what does that mean to me? Because we all see something different. And what would I prefer to see instead? What would I prefer to feel instead? And feel that in any area of your life, whatever that is, just feel and see that in any other area of your life. And, you know, trust me, the outside will start changing as well. It's what you focus on. Okay, it's what we focus on. So I love that you're focusing on your families. I love that you're focusing on learning and the love of learning. So thank you for people who are here now, and that that love of learning, and know that you are definitely enough. You get to do this. You don't have to do this. It's legal. It's great. You don't have to do this. You get to do this. Same. So use that language with your children. Do I have to do this worksheet now, Mum? Do I have to do this now? Well, no, you get to do it if you want to do it. Or if not that, what do you want to get to do right now? You know, I want to have a sleep. That's part of your deschooling. Okay, how long do you need to sleep for, do you reckon? I don't know, I'll give it a go. And remember, for every year of school, there might be a month of deschooling. So it's all over our inspired, home education inspired learning and earning. It's in many places. Right at the announcement at the beginning, walk where your feet are. Walk where your feet are. Notice what you notice, listen to what you're listening to. So I've trained life coaches over the years. I'm a professional life coach, have trained life coaches. Most of the connection I've got with the children is through my life coaching skills, which I'm very happy to pass on wherever I can, as you probably hear, to other parents, and integrate that with your homeschooling experience and the wisdom that Sammy has here today as well. So to Neil, how can we help?
Just with your what you just said then, the support that you can offer, Heidi, in finding that balance. How can you, I know we have talked about it, but I just don't know how it fits in with homeschooling. Like, I feel like I lost a bit of that connection about it with our conversation about it. Is that sort of part of deschooling? Is that going to kind of work in with that, with the chain that you offer? Yeah.
So just so I'm clear to Neil, what is the it that I just said? Because I said a lot as well. What's the it that resonated with you?
Support that you can give, which is, I think you mentioned those courses that were $60 or $70 or something. Is that what you were referring?
That's the actual coaching sessions.
Coaching.
Yep. So throughout the coaching sessions, we look at what's actually happening personally in your life and your family. And at the same time, I'm teaching you communication skills, if you're open and willing, on how you can use this in the future. So how to think about things, how to ask questions, how to listen, different little tips and tools. But at the same time as I'm giving you those, it's not like you're sitting in a lesson learning how to be a life coach or a parenting life coach. You're actually using it with real life things in your life right now. So, you know, we say there's 12 sessions for full transformation, but if you've got a problem, you know, you can come in and just maybe let's see if we can blast it out. Usually what we can go through in one session, you know, I've been told, is some coaches go through in 4 sessions, you know, but it depends on how fast and willing you are as well to move. And we've also got the genius camps to find out the inner genius and how kids learn through, and that's age from tweens to teens. And there's one starting next Thursday as well. So that really helps if the children are ready for something like that as well. So it may not be for the new people, but that's something coming up, but it may be. So if you want to.
And is that something you would recommend after a deschooling period? Or
well, that's interesting because deschooling periods come up from time to time.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's not just, you know, we say we recommend, you know, a month for each year of school, but my goodness, when the children turned like 8 and 11, there was stuff going on then. But then when they hit teens and they start finding more about themselves and more expression, and we can, you know, there's some aspects that, because we've gone down the unschooling or self-directed learning route, when they start doing the unschooling or what some families call radical unschooling with life skills. So sleep, that you allow them to stay up as long as they like until they find that balance in their body, you know, and sometimes you can guide that a bit and other times you can, when I say you can't, because some people say, well, of course you can because you're the parent, but we're about all joy and ease. And we're not saying about it's always easy. That's why I like to use the word tricky sometimes. It's not always easy, but with awareness, if you're listening to what you're listening to from yourself and others, and if you notice what you're noticing, you can go through anything tricky with ease, anything with ease, and then see some joy and laughter in it as well. So, yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question, but yeah, there's lots available. Yeah.
Can I add to that as well?
Yeah.
I just want to say, Heidi, like what you're talking about there is that you know, it's almost like it's not a one and done thing, this deschooling process. And I think what happens is it's like anything when you're developing knowledge or just, you know, when we're talking about self-development, is that you'll peel the first layer back in that first process. And then you go along and think everything's going swimmingly. And then the kids will throw something else up at you because that's what they're designed to do. And then you go, oh, here's another layer of that same thing that I thought that I had already like unconditioned myself from. Okay, cool. Let's dig into that. Like it is something that's going to come up again and again and again, because this stuff is deep rooted, because it's not just in us, it was in our parents and in their parents. Like it's deep stuff. And so I think it is going to take a long time to peel back, but you know, you start the process somewhere and then you'll find that as you go along, and the more that you follow them, the more you'll find more things that you're like, why is that triggering me, that they just want to, like, you know, play music all day, like, and just sit in their rooms and like have their headphones on and listen to music all day. Like, why am I having a real big problem with that? You know, that kind of stuff is what we can, you know, remembering that it's not just about your kids either, like it is about the whole family unit. I really loved how Heidi framed it all as being curious, because I talk a lot about that. I have a podcast with a colleague of mine, and we talk about nurturing neurodiversity. And one of the things that we talk about the most is that you have to be really curious about your child's behavior. And I think this goes for whether you have neurodiverse kids or not, but being curious about what's causing your child's behavior, because children and people, I think in general, always do the best they can. They're always operating and wanting to do their best they can. when you're having issues or difficulties with behavior that you're not responding well to, or excuse my daughter having a chat in the background, the cute little voice coming up the stairs.
Beauty, yeah.
Yeah, so when you're having a behavior that's triggering to you, or that, in schools, I think this comes up a lot, because often kids will rebel, and a lot of the time the behavior, especially for our neurodiverse kids, is not a choice. It's not something that they're doing because they're trying to manipulate you, or they're trying to, like, get their own way all the time, and they're not listening, and like all of these labels and these things that we're told as parents that's what your child's doing from babies, right? We're told this, like, oh, if you're making a rod for your own back if you don't, like, teach your kid to sleep in a cot, or or like if you haven't weaned them from breastfeeding by the time they're 12 to 18 months old, well then, like, are you like making them a bit dependent on you? All these sorts of things. These messages start from probably even before they're born, really. And it's about being curious about what's causing the behavior, because behavior comes from a child trying to get a need met. If they haven't been able to meet the need themselves or find it just naturally, then they're going to behave to get the need met. And so I think it comes up a lot with our neurodiverse kids, because they are, I believe, they're actually more connected to their inner needs and desires and drives, and they're less affected by the conditioning that tells them that they shouldn't be. So when they go into schools and a neurotypical kid will be sitting there going, okay, like, everyone else is sitting down and being quiet, okay, I better do that as well. But in neurodiverse kids is like, I need to move. They're getting up and they're walking around and they're having a chat. Like there's less of that need. And for a lot of our neurodiverse kids, that gets squashed and they get taught to mask. And that's where a lot of the anxiety and the depression issues can come in. And the fact that, they're often falling behind on their learning because they're so busy focused on, I have to sit still in this chair. They're so busy focused on, that light's really loud and buzzing, that pen clicking is really annoying me, and the teacher's talking and I don't know what the teacher's saying, so I'm just going to, but I know I have to sit here and be still and quiet, so I'm just going to do that. And then when it comes time to do the work, they're sitting there and not doing anything because they don't know actually what they're supposed to be doing, because they couldn't hear the instructions because there was too much else going on with that input. And so understanding that the behavior is acting to get a need met and being curious about that instead of judging it, because we are really conditioned and programmed to just judge the behavior and say that they're just being naughty, or they're being, they're misbehaving. Like even the word misbehaving, there's no such thing as misbehaving. There's behaving. We behave in ways, and sometimes that's not acceptable, and sometimes yes, but that doesn't mean take any limits away. There will be still limits on particular behaviors, but that's about approaching behavior with curiosity. I'm like, wow, like you're really like, you're really punching me here. Like, this is not okay. Like, we've got to, we need to move you away because this is not safe for either of us. It's not acceptable. I'm not willing for you to hit me, but I can see that in your body. I can see the way you're acting is you're really angry. I can see you're really angry. Let's find a way to get that anger out in a way that's not going to hurt anybody. And then when we've got the feelings out, then we might be able to have a conversation later about what was going on and why. But just naturally, I think having just always coming from that premise of curiosity about everything is like, that's the number one rule, I think, for life, but for homeschooling in particular, because if you're just going to be curious about everything, then you'll be able to find your way so much easier. You'll be able to flow with what your kids need. You'll be demonstrating to them what it's like to be curious about things, and so then naturally they will be gravitating to be curious about things. And I think there's something else that Heidi mentioned in there about, about yourself. So it's like, obviously you want to demonstrate things within yourself. So connecting to yourself, to what you need and what you desire, and honoring that. So that can be things like setting boundaries and saying, you know what, the noise in here is too much for my ears. So either you guys need to go outside, or I'm going to leave and take 5 minutes, because I actually I can feel in myself that I'm getting too irritated, and I'm going to say things that I don't mean to say. I'm going to react ways that I don't want to react. So I just need to give myself some time. Those sorts of things, and actually talking those through, instead of just going, I'm going outside for 5 minutes, or like, you guys just go away, or, instead of kind of reacting the way we often do as parents, is just taking that time to go, guys, you know what? Like, I'm really struggling right now. I need to have a cup of tea in silence. So would you guys like to go outside, or would you like to stay and I'll go out? Like, which way would you like this to go? Because either way, we're having some space right now. All of that kind of thing, I think, is really important. And I think also, the piece about getting to know your kids is also kind of knowing what they value, because generally as families, we'll have family values, so things that as parents we instill in our kids, whether that's done consciously or unconsciously, subconsciously. You know, there's certain values that we instill in our kids, but there's also things that they value just as individuals. And so working out what those things are and tapping into that. And I think that's particularly true if we have neurotypical parents and neurodiverse kids, because generally our values are different, or our, you know, the way that we approach the world and the way that we view the world can be quite different. And so, you know, tapping into their world and starting there, and then introducing some of your own things and sharing some things together, I think is a really, really important aspect of it as well.
Mm. Yep.
Terrific. Yeah, so a mother told me when we were in kindy, I think it was kindy or grade 1, said, remember when Maddie kicks you in the back of the chair in the car, when he's kicking the back, he's actually not doing that to you. He's not coping. And to have those words that he's not coping, I went, oh my, you know, and then I immediately looked and felt differently, and I'm going, of course, you know, of course, but for somebody to share that with love and compassion was wonderful. And then when hitting, you know, an older years, the same thing. He's just not coping. You know, and we've got a tendency sometimes even to say, not, as you said, you know, go away with, and I love that, to voice that, to be the change and actually show that there's times, because I said to the boys, if you see me out on the veranda on that spot, or so choose a spot, whether it's on the veranda, your special chair in the library, wherever it is. Obviously, if they're young, still reasonably close to them, you say, if you see me there with a cup of tea or a glass of wine, don't come near me. All right. So they knew, and they got to value personal space as well. And there was one stage that Maddie wasn't coping. I still remember this. He wasn't coping with something, and I had nothing left in the tank, because remember, this was a child that wasn't sleeping. I had to sleep beside him. I tried to sneak away. He'd wake up. So I had, you know, times that I didn't have a lot of sleep either, and we all have that as parents. Then he needed hugs. He needed to be held. And I just said, I can't. And there's nothing left. He was only, I don't know, he would have been, maybe he might have been the 7 or 8, and I just had nothing. And I said, but you know what? That's okay that I've got nothing. And not that you need to go fend for yourself or find something somewhere else, because Daddy wasn't home either. I just said, how about you just sit there beside me? I'm going to sit on this special chair, and you know, my comfortable chair, and you just sit there. And he was crying. I said, you're safe. You're safe. You are okay. You're safe. I know you need to be close. So you kept him close. I kept him close and still honored me. And then when I'd taken a certain amount of breaths, and I pray as well, and I said, you know, God, what do I need to do here? And it was, okay, I can put my hand on his shoulder. And then gradually I was given the strength and the thoughts that I could then put my arm around him. And then I said, it's, you know, and I said, no, it might be soon. And then I said, you can come up now. And then he ended up on my lap, but in my timing. Yeah. And sometimes it just needs to be their timing too. I'd forgotten about that incident.
Yeah.
But isn't it funny how as mothers we have such immense guilt around that? Like, oh my God, I'm like, the stories that you start to tell yourself in that moment is like, oh my God, I'm such a terrible mother. I can't even hold my child right now. Like, what is wrong with me? You know, all of those sorts of things that just pop up. So having the curiosity and the compassion for your children first needs to be applied to yourself. So like, I mean, my kids are 5 and 3, and I'm still early in this journey, and there are lots of times throughout the day where I'll turn around and go, why are you doing this? Can't you just play nicely? Like, you know, like you lose your mind sometimes. And that's because, and I think particularly in the last 2 years have been very difficult, because obviously there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. There's, you know, in and out of school, in and out of lockdowns, like there's lots of other things going on in the world that as adults we're trying to figure out and navigate and hold, and then we're also trying to hold the, you know, the emotions and the household stuff that's going on for our kids. And it's a lot sometimes, and I think we have reduced capacity to actually meet our needs the same way we normally would. Like, we can't just, you know, go out for dinner with our girlfriends one night, or, you know, like take them to Nana's house so that you can go and have a massage, or, you know, like a lot of those sorts of things that we often will do, it has been taken away. And so finding the, you know, the time and the space to give to yourself is reduced in capacity. So I think compassion is number one. But even just being aware that those things are happening in your brain, to go, oh, like, where's that thought coming from? Because I'm giving my child a gift here by saying that I need some space, is also giving your child a gift, because it's also teaching them that when they need some space, they don't have to give to somebody else. They can take that space for themselves.
I like that.
Powerful stuff. Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
I definitely would like your podcast put in the link under
yeah,
I can. Yes, definitely.
I was going to ask you that too, Sammy, if you could pop that in, because I'd love that.
Yeah, so Matt will probably help me get the recording up on YouTube, and then I'll put the link up on a few different sites tonight, and then we'll put that. I'll actually also put it on YouTube on the in the
description.
there.
Yeah, I'll message it to you, Heidi, if you like. I'll pop the pop the link to the podcast in, because it's lots of fun. We have some great conversations with some brilliant people, and it's good. It's good fun.
Fantastic. Read alouds. Where do they fit with our neurodiverse kids? When we do read alouds coming home, what have you got to say about those, Sammy?
Read alouds, do you mean as in like readers that come home from school, or like books that you can get on CD and stuff that you listen to?
I know that you actually bring the kids close and read, no matter if, so this might be something when there's multiple either neurodiverse or one neurodiverse and others, like how can we do family activities with the neurodiversity as well, and then maybe even link that to a plan?
Yeah, so I think for starters, you've got to find things that everyone loves to do. Like, if you looked at, you got to do that process where you actually sit down and for yourself, what do I really value? Like, if you really love reading aloud to your children, because I do, I know I relate to that a lot. Why do I really value reading aloud to my children? It's because I love to read. I love the brilliance that books can give you, the world that it can take you to. I really value literature. And so therefore, that's actually a really high value of mine, and why I read to my kids every night. So working out what my values are, if I have a partner, working out what my partner's values are and what they really bring to the table, what they really love and enjoy doing together, and then actually sitting down and working it out with your kids. Now, it's going to depend on your kids' ages, whether they do that for themselves and tell you, or whether you kind of have to infer that from things that they gravitate to, and depending on their ability to communicate with you as well, and how well you've sort of, you know, worked that out, and how old they are. But working out what is it that they actually value and what do they really love to do. Like, if you really love reading out loud to your kids and they're like running out the door, like playing with toys, like not listening, if they're just not interested in that, do we need to rethink that as as an activity? Like, can we find that somewhere else? You know, is there another way that we can introduce that? Perhaps do we need it to be, different kinds of books? Does it need to be like books where we get them to jump up and down, or whether, we do music and dancing to each other? So maybe some music that tells a story. Maybe we watch a musical where we can actually get up and move around, but then you're still getting the storytelling. Is there a way that we can find activities that actually coincide with everybody's values? Because as parents, there's going to be stuff that we love to do and we would love our kids to love, but we can't force our kids to love them. If they're just not into the books, well, we might just kind of have to go, maybe that's just the thing that I do. Maybe I get some books that I really love to read, and I take some time to read books to myself, and my kids can be around, they can be playing, and they can witness me reading a book that I love to read. And then they might start to be curious about, why does Mum love to read so much? Like, they might start to come around to that, but trying to force it on them is going to make them go the other way, So finding things to do as a family that everybody loves to do. So if your child, for example, really, needs a lot of sensory input, if they love to like bounce on the trampoline and things like that, but you find that, you go on there and you're like, I really don't like bouncing on the trampoline. Like for my kids, we've got a netted trampoline. So what I'll do is I'll say, I'll push you. So they lean up against the net and I push them over, and they giggle and they love that kind of thing. So is there a way that you can get involved in their play, involved in things that they love to do, but also in a way that respects what you actually want to do? Because it's the same way. Like if you're forcing your child to do something, they're not really going to be into that. If you're forcing yourself to do something that your kids love to do, but you're actually not really in it, they're going to sense that, and they're going to want to do it for longer, and they're going to be keeping asking because they feel that you're not actually really there. So finding a way to engage with things that actually you want to do. Like for me, being a kinder teacher, I always used to just love to get down on the floor and play with kids. Like that was part of the job that I loved. And then I had my own kids and I was so exhausted that I was like, the last thing I want to sit down and do is like play with Barbies or like, Paw Patrol toys or something. Like I just don't want to do that right now. And so what we'll do is we'll find other ways of playing together. I was like, you know what, it would be really great if we could like build a castle for Anna and us to play in. And so like we'll get in and build the Duplo and stuff because I like that sort of stuff. I'm like, yeah, I can build some blocks. Like I'm quite happy to sit there and help you, put the things in. Finding ways that we can actually honor what we really, really want to do. And if it is at a point in the day where you're like, you know what, I really just can't play right now, it's setting that limit and setting that boundary and saying, I cannot. So I'm quite happy for you to go and play if you'd like to go and play, or you can choose from these two things that I'm quite happy and willing to do now. But that's how it's going to be. Or we can make a special time on this day at this time where we can do that activity, but not right now. That kind of thing.
Thank you. Sammy, Neil needs to go, so let's bring this home and meet again maybe on topics based on what the power of, I usually say the power of a coaching session, the power of one of these Zoom sessions where we come together can also continue afterwards as well. You get to listen again.
Absolutely. So if anyone has questions, if they want to pop them in the, when you share the link, pop them in the comments or PM either of us. I'm happy to come back and answer in another Zoom, or even just post some things in the group if that's helpful to people as well.
Yeah, terrific. We'll definitely say that again at the end as well. This with that you said you liked the reading and maybe your kids don't. A way to bring that in. You said it a few times, and this might be a podcast that you can do, or another one that you and I can do together, of some key questions that can be asked as well. And then the power of listening afterwards is there another way that we can bring this in? Because what I'd like to see is, how can we homeschool a neurodiverse child and a young one and still work? And how can we do this with teenagers, a neurodiverse teenager, and still work? So I want those as topics, and please comment if you would like some specific questions around that in the comments. But also around the dinner table, just one thing that we can do around the dinner table in the evening, or if you come together for snack time or so, ask everybody, what is your best thing? What was your best thing? And Sammy might say, I went to Paris today. What, Mum? You were here all day. In that book I read, I was in Paris. I was having my hot chocolate, I was, had my pain au chocolat, and I escaped today, and that's the best thing. And I couldn't have had that without my joy and my love of reading. So then you can share your best things and incorporate that as well. So, yep, you've got this. Mums and dads, work as a team, and we are here as a community to support you. Anything you'd like to say before you go, Neil?
Thank you. No, I don't have anything except thank you.
Bless you. Love your smile. Love your smile. So all the best with your next Zoom and whatever you've got on tonight, and we hope to see you soon. All right.
Thank you again. Thank you, Sammy.
No worries. Lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks. Bye.
All right, so the recording is still on, Sammy. For those still listening, we will definitely put your contact details underneath. We would like some encouragement to put some more questions underneath. So based on your experience, you said that I love that you started seeing what was happening around you the last 12, 18 months and the way you pivoted from your knowledge that you were doing from kindy teacher to working with neurodiverse kids as well, and maybe not just autism, other things. You know, I love how you talked about, you know, actually that was fantastic, where it's that the depression and anxiety can come from, and this is one thing I did not see in my son when we came out of school. After a while, once it had come out of his skin, there wasn't the anxiety there, unless he was in, you know, suddenly didn't know or thought he was blamed for something that he didn't do on a, you know, an excursion or something we went on. Yeah. So he didn't have the anxiety, and I kind of feel that the anxiety comes from when there's a foot in two camps, when there's a this is who I want to be and be allowed to be, and this is looking like who I have to be. And I want to honor this part. They're still so young. They want to honor this part of them. And yet they don't seem, that's not how you get the gold stars or you get the points for your team. And boy, you do not want to be the one that loses points for your team. You know, that's sort of that foot in each camp as well. So yeah, I'd based on your other experience, what do you think some other topics, let's put it out there, some other topics that you might be able to support on? And again, I acknowledge though that if you are asked the right question, you know, or the question, I'm sure you'll come up, you know, and have the answer. But what have you seen out there a lot of, and what have you heard that you think may be beneficial, just to you know, give people permission to say, yeah, it's okay, just let us know that you want to know more about this.
Yeah, so, definitely. Well, look, I think, you know, there's a lot of questions that I get around, and similar to things that we've covered today, around, you know, like how do I meet the curriculum? It's like all good and well to say, okay, cool, let them go play on bikes and go out to the park and, you know, do all of these cool things. That's great. But then what do I do about this thing that I feel like is niggling me on the back of, you know, the back of my shoulder, and like I have to show that they're meeting these things. So total normal question to have, and absolutely happy to answer that further. But yeah, I think that, you know, worrying about the curriculum is a big one, and there's always going to be, I think, more questions around that. So definitely feel free to ask about that. And if you have specific things, like if you have a specific interest that you know your kid is just wants to immerse themselves in, and you think it has nothing to do with anything, tell me what it is and I'll show you how I can fit in the curriculum. I feel like that's kind of my superpower that I've really developed over the last 12 months in particular, is going, my kid really loves this, and I go, cool, here's all the activities we can do, here's how it meets like probably almost all 8 areas of the curriculum, like we can do it this way, you know. And even if you do one of those activities and then the kid goes, actually now I'm interested in this, just the process of that is so helpful to go, okay, now I see how this one thing that they mentioned I can turn into like 10 different activity options, and then that's going to meet like all the 8 KLAs, key learning areas. So I think that's, you know, happy to answer more questions around that. There's another one I think that comes up a lot around socialization. So if people are worried about, you know, one of the main questions, and it's often coming from the, you know, from the male person in the child's life, but not always, is like, how are they going to make friends? How do they, you know, like if they don't get to just like go out in the yard and play with kids, and how are they going to learn resilience and working out fights and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, I have a lot more to say on that than what we'll have time to cover today. So I'm very happy to come back and talk more on that another time as well.
Is that different from a neurodiverse child to a neurotypical child, and how to make friends and what's good?
Well, that the social side of things for, you know, for a lot of not all, but for a lot of neurodiverse kids is really difficult, and often it comes from not having just that innate ability to look at someone and understand what they mean by their tone of voice, by their body language. Like that sort of thing can often take longer for our neurodiverse kids to kind of work out. And they often take things very literally. So when somebody says I'm fine, but they say it in a way where their face says they're not fine and their tone of voice says they're not fine, the neurodiverse person hears I'm fine. So navigating relationships can be very difficult. But I think the main, you know, thing that I want people to know is it doesn't get easier getting thrown into a yard at school with no support on how to learn it.
I actually think some parents may not have even seen their children making friends before. apart from when they were maybe babies, when we're put together with some other children, so that they go on, run and play, or birthday parties, maybe the time you've got, Matt had to stand back for a while and just watch. And just watch, and then he went in and experienced something as well. So,
and I think a lot of that need, it comes from needing to understand what I'm getting myself into, because so much of the world is geared to brains that don't work the way that my brain works. So I don't naturally just understand the order of things like other people seem to, and a lot of the times you're coming into a social situation going, why does everybody else seem to understand this language and I don't? It's like you're going to a foreign country and everybody's speaking the language and you can only understand some really basic words that you pick up here and there. So you can kind of get by some of the time, and obviously it's going to be different for different children, and depending on their presentations and how much they understand and how much they are interested in understanding and connecting with others. Generally they are still driven by that biological need to connect with people and to have their crowd and their people, but they're often coming into these situations going, I really don't know what's going on. It's I think it's a key reason why one of the typical, I suppose, traits that we would see is that they kind of take over conversations. They'll talk about their particular topic of interest incessantly, that's just what they'll talk about. And there's not often a lot of room for anyone else to bring in something some input that they have. And that really comes from a need to control the conversation, because if they can control the conversation, then they know what's expected, then they can, their anxiety is not overwhelming them. They can kind of keep their anxiety at bay because they're not worried about what someone else might say and not knowing how to react and not knowing what they're being asked to do. There's so much in it. There's so much. And I think, coming from, teaching social skills in groups to now in the last, couple of years, really starting to understand the fact that socialization for a neurodiverse person, it actually can look different from a neurotypical person, and one is not better than the other. So just teaching neurodiverse kids how to socialize in a neurotypical way is actually not that helpful. We need to also teach neurotypical people how neurodiverse people socialize and why what they say seems different, why how they present in social situations might seem different, and how can we be more understanding of each other.
And then helping the parent realize that too. You could be at one co-op or one learning center or library or whatever, and you've got one child that's socializing this way and still may need, I loved it because it wasn't helicopter parenting, but issues that you may not know about when they come home and say, how was school today? And there was an issue in the playground. You may never know about it, but there's, that's where a sleepless night came from, or that's where a nightmare came from.
Yes, but you can jump in there and you can support them to work that out. And that doesn't mean working it out for them. That might mean giving them some language to go back to the other child with. That might giving them some perspective on what the other person is going through, because our kids can't do that, especially early days. They can't do that yet. It's such a better environment to actually foster those skills, as opposed to just letting them develop survival skills, I call it. If they're out in the playground at school, they're generally developing survival skills, not social skills.
Yes.
So it's very
and
lots in that topic.
The bigger picture, I think we talked about the bigger picture at the beginning, or somewhere in the middle, what we're seeing outside. Like if we address with what's inside, we might see something else outside. That's the same thing too. I love is 𝙤𝙘𝙚𝙚𝙧𝙨 said as well, and we can start putting a few quotes up there too, that he said that society needs deschooling, because when we're at school, it's all about the rules, following the rules. You're rewarded with the rules if you do that. And there's the ones that want to question the rules and want to check the rules. And what's happening at the moment, if we would just I just think what's happening is such a gift, and it gives us an opportunity, like you said, even those massages, these normal things that we used to have a release with, that isn't there. But we want to live and thrive and demonstrate this to our children, so we're obligated to actually find our ways and think differently and ask better questions, and know that it's possible, and that support of a community, even if it is online, is really, really important. So we start thinking differently and we de-school society. So that's the bigger picture, but that's a whole different podcast.
Yeah, and it definitely, we can talk about that for hours, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I do like this idea though, that, you know, that what's happening in the world is I think the catalyst for a lot of people to go, oh, like, no wonder my kid's not engaged in school, because this stuff's boring.
Yeah.
I don't know how many parents I've heard say, if I have to do another, like, of the 50,000 worksheets that I've printed off, like, I don't want to do it anymore. And it's like, if as the adult is going, oh, I don't want to do this, like, you can kind of get why the kids are like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, I want everybody to know as well, I was a teacher. I know a lot of teachers. I don't think teachers are the problem. There, of course, is, as there are in the industry, are really excellent teachers and probably some not so good teachers, and probably some teachers that maybe need to move on because they've been in the industry too long. But I think that, you know, teachers are generally, like everybody, doing the best with what they've got. And so they know that they need to reach with these kids in different ways, and they are doing the best they can within the time they have, within the structure they have. But for me, it's the structure that we need to change. That's the bit that is causing them, you know, and teachers' workloads is just getting added to more and more and more, because the more research that comes out that highlights the way that kids learn, it's then the teacher's responsibility to meet that and to create that within an environment that is not set up to create that.
Yes. Yes, the ecosystem that raises the child. It used to be the village that raises the child, and now it's the village within an ecosystem, and we needed to change that.
And the process, to be fair, is in terms of humanity, is relatively new. Like, this is an industrial age creation, is schooling for all children, and a specific, you know, that we send them to school and they just go to school. Like, this is actually relatively new. This is not something that happened all throughout humanity. And so I think what's happening now is we're realizing that, and we're going back to actually, no, it's got to be individualized. It's got to be, you know, something that meets the needs of each child, not what we want them to produce at the end, because the focus is always on what they can produce, what work they can show me so that I can check the box to say that they can do this thing, you know, what exam results can they get, what you know, and at the end of it all, what uni can they get into, what degree can they get, what job can they get that then fuels the economy and fuels productivity. Like, it's all about what you can produce, and actually our value as humans has nothing to do with that.
No, it was interesting when Matt went back into a school environment, even though there was only 90 students for grade 10, 11 and 12, you know, and it was a music industry college, and it was quite creative, but like, he changed again going back into that environment, and he thought, I have to do the assignments of the subjects I don't like first before I do the ones that I really love, which meant that those ones he really loved, sometimes he didn't get in on time as well. And I kept on, I just held the space for him and said, what do you want to do again? He said, I want to produce music. I want to produce music and write songs. And I'm going, so are you actually learning that there now? And he goes, not enough. And then he'd go another week and this would happen again. I'm going, so what do you actually want to do again? What's your why? What's your why that you want to actually, because what I heard is that you want to produce music, and you've got an amazing eye for detail to take somebody else's music even and produce that, you know, ready for, you know, the world, and already at 17, and you want to write songs more. So why are you there again? So I just every day just gave him permission until he said, well, I'm going to try out here, because at this creative uni, he actually didn't go, I want to do that degree. It's still about, I want to produce music and learn to write songs. I didn't learn enough there. I don't want to do it online. I do want to do it face to face with people and mentor and get, you know, meet other people to go into another band together, and then get connected with the music community in my local environment. So I'm going to go there. Yeah. So it's not about the degree, even though he'll get a Bachelor of Music. It is actually about learning to produce music, and he's just loving it. He just loves it. So, yeah. So there is hope. You mentioned, you know, that people are worried about fitting curriculum in and how that's going to do, but we're in safe hands. We've got Sammy that's in Victoria. We've got a few contacts up here as well, but I love the way you word it. And it's, you know, we've got the rapport here with the community now with the superpower. Your superpower is actually finding out what your kids like, and integrating also what you value as a family and how you want to show that up in curriculum. And then let's put that in a plan together, work on that together. And then if that doesn't, you know, that doesn't keep continue, then we can tweak that into something else. And I would imagine you're like a coach, Sammy, that it's not, I like the analogy of a coach, and it's different. Like a mentor says, this is the way you ride the bike, you know, this is the type of bike you need. This is the type of plan you need, basically. Yeah. And therefore it's about, hang on, what bike do you want? What plan do you want? Yeah. How can we put that together? I
start my questions with, what do you want your days to look like?
Great.
What do you want to do?
And then eventually they're on the bike by themselves and they're riding by their bike. So it's not about, you know, stay. We're always here for support, but, you know, eventually that methodology, that how to incorporate life and the loves of yourself and the children, the values of that you've got as a family, and the children end up showing, you know, we can talk about a family mission statement, all of that, and let's get it into a curriculum if that's your concern. And then let's also talk about the socialization differences with neurotypical, neurodiverse, how that looks like for you as a family. Where do you sit in the family? Make sure you're all nurtured along the way and you're being the change as well. Wow. So it all comes together here at Changemaker Teens Global at the private group, Home Education Inspired Learning and Earning, and Sammy's a part of that community. And we've got Cara, and we've got Amanda Bartell in Queensland, we've got Patricia in Queensland, we've got Andrew Lloyd, we've got Tamara Kidd, we've got Beverly Payne. My goodness, we've got such a great community. Welcome to it. Well done for choosing the best for your homeschooler, for your kiddos. And yeah, we look forward to speaking with you again and hearing your questions. So Sammy, anything in one sentence, in a nutshell, to bring it home?
Just thank you so much for having me. Always here, happy to answer any questions you have. So tag me in the group, or yeah, if we've got a few, we'll come back, and I'm happy to come back and do some more in the future. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Very grateful. Thank you, everyone. Take care.